If you are an apostate, or if you are an atheist who spends any amount of time around Christians, there is a good chance that you have encountered the argument from morality. For those of you who have not yet experienced the delights of this particular argument, it usually goes something like this. If there's no God to tell you that it's wrong to throw babies into ceiling fans, then how do you know that it's wrong? Obviously it is wrong, but how do you know that it's wrong? If there's no God to set the rules for us, on whose authority do you say that it's wrong? If the government decided that it would be in our best interest to create a national holiday called Bebe Go Flyin', would throwing babies into ceiling fans suddenly become moral? Why not, if morality is just a human construct? If there's no God, and there's no reward and no punishment, and we're all just clumps of atoms, why not run around raping and murdering and pillaging? Why would things like kindness, fairness, and well-being even matter anyway?
A live human body and a deceased human body have the same number of particles. Structurally, there's no difference.
This has become a favorite among Christian apologists ever since they came to grips with the fact that they have no hope of winning any argument that was rooted in actual evidence. It really is a piss-poor argument, but it's one that I've heard so often that I thought it would be worth dissecting. First of all, Christians. Bragging about how, if there was no threat of punishment, I would run around raping and murdering is not the flex that you think it is. Second of all, it really isn't an argument for God's existence. At best, it's an argument for how scary life would be if God didn't exist. Which, okay, I actually kind of get. When I first started losing my faith, I was very uncomfortable with the implication that there might not be any absolute right and wrong, no reward, no karmic justice. My thoughts on where morality comes from, and even what morality is by definition, has changed a lot since then, but I do understand. I get it. I remember how terrifying and sickening it was to come to terms with the idea that there might not be any objective morality. But, as I said, it would really suck if God doesn't exist is not an argument for God's existence. If you're ever in the shower and you feel a lump somewhere where there shouldn't be a lump, I hope that you will go and see a doctor and get it checked out. You can't just say, but a world in which I have cancer would be a really scary world, and ignore the evidence. Reality is what reality is. You might not like the thought of living in a godless world, but you can't just bury your head in the sand and hide away in your fantasy world.
I wish I could let you just live in your fantasy world.
Second of all, I do believe in objective morality. I just don't believe that morality is a set of divine decrees handed down by a deity. No, I think the definition for morality that I most agree with is that which increases well-being and decreases suffering. And that standard is objective. We might not always agree on exactly what will lead to the most well-being and prevent the most suffering, but it is an objective standard that we can all strive for. And I think that using this basic understanding of what morality is, we can all agree that throwing babies into ceiling fans is, by definition, immoral. Now, I've heard people try to twist that definition in an attempt to discredit it. I've heard people argue that, for example, stealing my coworker's lunch out of the communal fridge improves my own well-being, so from my own vantage point, wouldn't it be moral? In that case, you are still causing suffering to others. You're still diminishing the well-being of others. So it's immoral, objectively, all without any need for a God to tell us why it's immoral or to threaten us with any kind of punishment. Which leads up to my third point. If you feel that you really need some divine decree or threat of punishment to stop you from running around, raping and murdering and pillaging, I'm not sure that the Abrahamic God is the best foundation for that morality. God seems to not only abide, but to actually delight in some truly awful things. Conquest, slavery, infanticide, rape.
These are a few of my favorite things.
This is the farthest thing from what I would consider to be the objective standard of morality. Christians will often go on to say, but you know throwing babies into ceiling fans is wrong. You know it intuitively. You feel guilt and shame. That's because you are made in the image of God, and God wrote his law in your heart. I beg to differ. I love seafood. I've even dared to eat bacon a time or two, and the writing on my heart didn't have anything to say about it. Yes, we humans as a species have empathy. We see someone struggling and we want to come to their aid. We see someone who is mourning and we want to offer them solace. We hear a baby crying and we want to throw it into a ceiling and we want to offer it comfort. These are inherent properties that not only cross national and religious boundaries, but boundaries between species as well. Clearly, you have never owned a dog if you think that humans are the only animals that are capable of feeling empathy or shame. Yet, I have never heard anybody arguing that dogs were made in the image of God, or that God must have written any sort of doggy version of the Torah on their hearts. If God really wrote his law on our hearts, why don't we inherently know that lighting a candle on a Saturday is a capital offense? Why aren't we inherently disgusted at the thought of eating black pudding? Okay, I actually am a little wigged out at the thought of eating black pudding, but that's merely a cultural thing. A lot of people are perfectly fine with it. Why is it that, when you factor out social conditioning and peer pressure, guilt and shame only extends to behaviors that have the potential to be evolutionarily detrimental? So, where does our inherent sense of right and wrong actually come from? Why do we feel shame? Allow me to explain it to the best of my understanding, with perhaps just a bit of embellishment. Long, long ago, there were two cavemen named Gorp and Melvin. They lived in a cave with a community of cavemen and cavewomen where they were, for the most part, well-liked and respected. There was just one thing that made them a bit less respectable than the other cavemen. Whenever the cavemen would gather around the communal fire pit to eat the roast beast, Gorp had a nasty habit of flavoring the meat with his very own special sauce. Melvin thought that this was the funniest thing he'd ever seen, so on one occasion he decided that he would join in as well. But the rest of the community, as you can imagine, were rather upset about the whole affair. "Why," the other cave folk would shout at them, "dost thou deign to defile these morsels from which we must all partake?" Gorp did not care one bit. Seeing the others get all riled up over his misbehavior just made the whole thing seem even funnier to him. But Melvin, well, there was something rather odd about Melvin. Melvin could not bear being shouted at and hated by his community. It filled him with a sense of shame and made him question his own sense of self-worth, so he never did it again. Gorp, of course, continued to defile every single roast beast every chance he got, and it continued on this way for many, many years. Then, one day, a group of saber-toothed what-the-fucks showed up and attacked the community of gentle, cave-dwelling primates. The poor, terrified cavemen banded together, using branches and rocks and whatever else they could muster to stave off the encroaching menace. At one point, a saber-toothed what-the-fuck pounced upon Melvin, and he cried out in horror, and the other cavemen rallied around him, attacking the menace with a united fury until it withdrew and Melvin was saved. Then another saber-toothed what-the-fuck backed Gorp up against a rock, and he cried out to his companions, "Behold, I have no recourse! Hearken thee, I pray, to my cry!" But the other cavemen merely stared at him, because they all remembered the roast beast. So Gorp, selfish and shameless as he was, died beneath the maw of the saber-toothed what-the-fuck. Melvin, on the other hand, lived on, and became the father of many little cave babies, who grew up to be just as full of shame and existential dread as he was. And so it went on and on. Those that cared only about themselves and their own immediate gratification were forsaken and allowed to die off. Those who functioned as part of their community, and who put the wants and needs of others ahead of their own selfish impulses, continued to live and to thrive, working together to make the cave and the world a better place. So no, I don't believe that morality boils down to a set of rules created by God. The very concept of morality is a human invention, based upon traits acquired through an unguided process of life, death, and the passing on of the traits best suited to the preservation of our species. Yes, we are just animals. Yes, we are just chemical engines, and all of our emotions, even love, in spite of all the beautiful poetry and music that it has inspired, is nothing more than a series of chemical reactions in our brains. So, what's the point of living a good life? If we're all just clumps of atoms spiraling toward the heat death of the universe, does morality really matter? For that matter, does anything really matter? I, for one, would say yes. Yes, it matters. Who you want to be matters. The kind of world you want to live in, and how you go about making that kind of world a reality, matters. It may not matter a billion years from now, but right now, today, it matters. Not because God said that it matters, but because it matters to you. The world may freeze over, the stars may burn out, and the last sentient mind may pass away and take the last memories of conscious existence to the grave with it. But right now, today, how we live and how we love still matters. It matters to me, and I'm pretty sure, whether you're religious or not, it matters to you too. Our souls may not endure for all of eternity. We may find no rewards or punishments waiting for us on the other side of the grave. That doesn't make this experience we call life any less precious. Actually, I would argue that it makes our lives more precious, because this life, this flicker of consciousness on the brink of an all-consuming void, this is all we get. So why would you waste this precious moment hating the gay couple that moved in next door, or the Hindu family that lives down the street? Why not just be kind, live the best life you can live, and love as deeply as you can? If that seems like such an outrageous idea, if this is unacceptable to you, then no, I don't think atheists are the one lacking a basis for morality. One day, a group of saber-toothed what-the-fucks showed up and attacked the community of gentle